let's talk about the setting some coaching standards for future Penn Geesman coaches with your first staff, and let's take us on to 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and 20 years down the road. Talk about how your coaching style evolved, your expectation from your coaches evolved as time went on from the beginning really to the end.
Well, basically, I eventually ended up calling my staff co-coaches, not assistant coaches, because they were basically head coaches in the area that coached. And the hard thing to get going was our staff didn't believe in platoon football one winter. I said, we're going to teach platoon, and I remember telling the kids that, and the aforementioned Dennis Bonnet called up his hand. He said, we can't do platoon. I said, why not, Dennis? He said, we only got about 7 players. He said, they're really good. And, well, anyway, we found out we wanted to build numbers, and if you're in the top 44, you're no worse than second team. And about everybody on the team was second team or better that first year. So that's the one thing I wanted to do, and that meant our staff was now going to be coaching just one side of the ball, not the other. So we got that all set up, and as I said, I had the hard sell job on the coaches, but they'd been coming off, they'd been outscored like 340 to 40 the previous year, 0-10. So I mean, how much worse could things get? So anyway, we wanted to do that, and we ended up being 5-5, and coaches became big believers in platoon football. And I remember a couple of years later, we were kind of thin on talent, and I mentioned our staff. I said, maybe we ought to play like these 4 guys both ways. No, they were firm believers. They said, no, we want to stay with platoon. And an example of how well platoon football works is Ray Hinton, one of the best players we ever had at Penn. And we used to divide up our players. I would say this, I said, I'm going to take a quarterback and a running back, and then defense will get the next 11, and we'll go from there. But I wanted a quarterback and running back first. Well, we went race. I said, here's the deal. I says, I'm going to take 3. I need Ray Hinton. He's a great receiver and great blocker. And Charlie Lawrence, he's our best linebacker. He'll be our best defensive player. He said, you told me, and went on and on. And I said, well, I'm taking Ray. Charlie in the middle got up, slammed the door, got in his car and left. He was so upset. He said he had to have Ray Hinton. Well, I took him, and Charlie got over it. But about the 4th game of the season, we had both our starting linebackers were hurt and going to miss a week. So I told Charlie, I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to let Ray play defense this week. And Charlie was all excited, so sent Ray down with the defense, and we were working with our backup tight end and everything. And then Wednesday, to the last half of practice, I turned in, there's Ray standing beside me. I said, Ray, what are you doing? He said, well, Coach Laurie came down. He said, I know we're working on it. He told me to come down and work with the passing game. I said, okay, get on in there. I asked Charlie, I said, what's the deal? He said, well, he's not as good as the 2 guys I got now. The second teamers. Here was Ray, and had this, he was maybe the best player on the team, but after 2 kids playing linebacker only for a month, they were now ahead of where Ray was. So that kind of made you believe in platoon football, and our staff believed in it, and that was kind of after that year, it was never again questioned. We only had 2 people that played a lot both ways. One played quarterback and corner. That was Nick Bayline, and the reason we did that, we used to play 7-on-7. So when Nick was our quarterback, the offense won every time. When Nick went to corner, the defense won every time. I said, he has to be on the field, and that's a tough. First of all, our corners, though, don't have a lot of adjustment. They're basically playing a man or a deep zone. I mean, and they don't have to make a lot. They don't flip sides or anything. So it was easy for him, and he'd started there the previous year. But then quarterback, he spent most of his time at quarterback, and we did win the state that year, so you have to say it worked out pretty good. Mike Rosenthal played some, and we just thought, here you had a guy at the time in high school, 6'7", 295, and good athlete, played basketball too. I said, it's kind of crazy to have him sitting down if if we got a 5-point lead and the other team's driving late in the game, and I got a 6'7", 295-pound athlete standing beside me on the sidelines. So he went in. I remember he told a newspaper reporter, asked him what position he played on defense. I put out fires. He says, I go in any one of these three spots where they need help. But we've done well with platoon football, and about the only time you see anybody playing both sides of the ball, it's usually a DB will play more out, like Mo Alla did this past year. And that's not bad level, but most of the time we're strictly platoon and have been for a number of years.
Gold Rush and the Black Crunch.
Wild Bunch.
Wild Bunch, Gold Rush. I'll get it right.
Yeah.
The origins of those, where did they come from, and who came up with the idea, and what was the concept behind them?
Well, the concept, when I would coach with Bill Siderwitz at Rensselaer, he brought that in. Our defense was the Monsters, for the Monsters the Midway, because that's the Bears trained at St. Joe College then. And I can't remember all, but our offense had it, and the deal was that the Wild Bunch went right on the front of your helmet, except at that time it was the Monsters. And Bill said, we're doing that for a reason. He said, if you come out there in the field and you got that sticker on, you better play hard, because they're going to be pointing you out and talking about it, your opponents, so you better play hard. And we say that goes on the front of your helmet because we want the other team's offense to see who they're going up against. That time at Rensselaer, we had a lot of kids playing both ways. So our offense was like the Jets, and we put that on the back. And because you couldn't have both on, and that's how that started. And Siderwitz told kids, when a defender gets knocked down and he turns around and looks downfield, I want him to know who knocked him down. We want him to see the Jets on the back of the helmet as he's looking. So that's kind of what he told the kids. It was basically, I think, because we had people going both ways. Well, when I wanted to do that right at Penn, and it was originally the Headhunters and the Jets. I took Jets and the Headhunters, and then after 2 years, we just decided we wanted to change it. We wanted Gold Rush, because we thought we ran the ball well, and our colors black and gold, so that was kind of a no-brainer for the offense. And then we used to talk about the guys that try to say, I want you wild out there, going crazy. So we've called them the Wild Bunch. The Wild Bunch and the Gold Rush, and that's stuck forever. The only thing I should have done was I should have patented those two names, because, they got them on sweatshirts, T-shirts, and marked everywhere now, and it's just everybody uses, it's known statewide, Gold Rush and Wild Bunch. So I don't think those will ever change, and that's kind of how it got started. I brought it with me from Rensselaer. We did it, and I thought it was a great idea. And then we'd done it at Kenton High, and then we started it at Penn. The one thing we did away with was the helmet awards. We used to do those, but the thing that did away with that is our schedule got fairly weak, and we were giving out 7 to 10 helmet awards to every we were winning 67 and we were meeting all these standards, team goals, and pretty soon kids didn't have any room on the helmet, and then they got arguing with coaches about why don't I just decided in the off season that we're not doing this anymore. 91 was the last year we did it, and that was a good team that went to the Dome. and lost to 38-14, the most points I ever allowed in 40 years of coaching. But they were national champs, and 38-14, believe it or not, that was about the closest game they'd had all year. That's how good they were. But we had a great team, and we had just skull and crossbones for the defensive award, stars for the all. We just, helmets were covered. I just said, this is kind of ridiculous. We want to make this a team thing. And the year before, we put mostly team goals in rather than individual, and we're still meeting them all. So I just said, no, we're not going to do them anymore, and we didn't. The only place we did them was scout team, and that was the other thing. What was one of the best things that I ever did, and you can win a varsity letter on a scout team. And I asked, when I talked to the team every Thursday during the playoffs, and I said, I want to hold up your hand if you won your first letter on the scout team. About 25 kids, see, they won the first letter. But here's why I did this. When we go deep in the playoffs, I used to have coaches from around the state. Westfield came up, and people from Lafayette area and would call and ask if they could come watch our practice and just see what we were doing. I said, yeah, I'd be glad. Well, I had Bill Sharp, one of the very, very few years that Penn was still going and the Jimmies weren't. And he asked me to come over, and I said, sure. So after the practice, he came up, thanked me, and he said, I want to tell you what you do better than anybody in the state. That got my attention. I said, what was it? He says, your scout teams. Offensive, he said, they give the best look I've ever seen. Your kids would be so well prepared on Fridays because of those guys. And I'm thinking, if Bill Sharp says that's one of the reasons we're winning, those guys ought to be rewarded for that. So we decided that off-season that the first 5 games, we give an offensive scout team player of the week, defensive scout team player of the week. The last 4 games, 2 offense, 2 defense. When the playoffs start, 3 offensive players of the week on the scout team, 3 defensive players. Because I want it to be a realistic goal for those kids. And plus, when you get in the postseason, you get days like this, snow and sleet, and you got kids that got no games. Thanks to the IHSA, they couldn't even dress for the tournament games because they put a number limit on you. And they were just out there to prepare our varsity. And they had nothing to look forward to. Well, I wanted to give them 2 things. You got a chance to win a varsity letter, and I'll guarantee you, when I was out there, kids would win it, and they said, that's your 3rd, you got a varsity letter. And those kids smile from ear to ear and get applause from the rest of the team. That was good. And I said, anybody that finishes the season in good standing is going to get every award that anybody else gets. And that includes rings. Everybody, when we win the state, everybody on our team got a ring. And I mean, I think that helped build numbers too, and it helped make it worthwhile. Because early on, we had kids when season was over, they wanted to go to basketball, they wanted to get ready for and I don't know how you could really, stop them on that. So we put, stay with us, and you win a varsity letter, and if you're still on the team in good standing, you're going to get the same award. And nobody ever leaves. As a matter of fact, we get a number of freshmen that, come in and want to come up and practice. Thinking, man, if we make a big run in the tournament, I can get a varsity letter if I do good in practice. So that was a good thing we did. We were the only team in the state at the time doing it. And I spoke about that at clinics. I've had other people come up and say, man, that's a great thing, to keep the young kids interested and give them something to shoot for. And we've had kids that win varsity letters that never played more than 5 plays all year on the varsity. So, I mean, and they're contributing. And we make we talk to the starters and they give nominees of who they think should be, that they thought were giving them good looks. So we bring them in, and the kid they play across from, at the end of each practice, they'll go over and shake his hand, thank him. So, we do a lot of little things like that I think helps make our program.
You also had a chance to put the names on the back of the jerseys. So let's talk about getting that done. That was once again, a lot of teams from the beginning of the year, they have the student athletes have their names on the jerseys. Some don't ever have it on there. But you guys put it into a reward situation. Talk about
that. It was when we first started it, and Corey's basically kept it the same way. He's tweaked it a little bit. But if we won the sectional, we put the names on the jerseys. Just a little more motivation. The kids really like that. I know some schools, the kids buy their jerseys at the start of the season. They have their names put on them, and other teams, like I say, never put it on there. So I mean, it's a personal thing. It's not the difference between winning and losing, but it does help in motivation. I mean, you cannot believe how excited those kids are first time they get their game jerseys on Thursday and get their names on the back of them. So it's something we like to do, and it's usually when you win the sectional, then we're going to put it on.
Okay. We got to shift gears from those traditions. I'm going to throw out a coach's name.
Okay.
I want you to give me about 3 or 4 minutes on each coach.
Okay.
And this is Chris Geesman on Wally Yeoman. This is Chris Geesman on Chuck Wagner. This is okay. So we're going to start. Who do you want to start with? So let's start.
That doesn't make any difference.
Okay. All right. This is Chris Geesman talking about his coaches that he's had a chance. Let's start with Charlie Laura.
Okay, Charlie came with me from Ohio. He was assistant for my buddy Tom Lansittle, who ended up coaching at Miami of Ohio and NC State. And I brought Charlie with me as a coordinator. He was a position coach there. I offered him a job as a coordinator in a school that I said was going to be real big, and it was. It got big, as you know. And he was very, very important for 2 reasons. Number one, he's so enthusiastic and so had so much initiative that, I mean, he just he came over with me. I was teaching driver's ed that first summer. He came over and lived with me. He went in and repainted the locker room, the lockers. He just said, I think it'll make it, a whole different look. And he was just doing stuff, and the kids just absolutely loved him. He would come out. If you've ever coached, back in the days, you had your full pad every practice, and it's 95 degrees. And it's the middle of the second week, and you're coming out for the afternoon practice, hadn't had a game yet, you're a week and a half away from one, kids are down. Charlie would come out, and and everybody would, and he would, if you're happy and you know it, nod your head. He'd start singing. If you're happy and you know it, your face will surely show it. The kids are all saying, this is the start of the afternoon practice, and they come moping out. Now Charlie was just like that. Weight room, he would just go crazy, hugging kids, and he was great. And the other thing that he liked to do is he wanted more responsibility. Oh, give me something more to do. And that was a great example for all the coaches I didn't hear. And Charlie was, he was setting up the defensive game plans, and he was this and that, and he was making sure everybody else was, doing what. I mean, he was just great. And I'll tell you the second thing he did. If you take a new job, very firmly about this, you got to bring in at least one coach that's there because of you. You need a confidant. You can't be looking at a film from last year and say something negative with the coaches that coached there last year. I mean, so we never did that. But if we had to talk, Charlie and I would talk among ourselves. He was a confidant. I could say anything I wanted to him, and he'd give me a blunt opinion on coaches, players, everything, just between he and I. So he was he just was tremendous for the morale of the team, a tremendous coach, and he was my confidant. So that was two things he did. And then he went on to a great career. Second year at Blackford, he won the state 13-0, beat Noblesville, coached by Jim Belden. Then he gets the Ann Arbor Pioneer job and wins the state twice, wins the league 5 times. Since then, they've only had like 2 winning seasons. And so, I mean, he's just, he had a lot of success, and he was a big reason. One interesting story. First year I was here, people for half the season thought he was me and I was a manager or something. We opened a meshway, he got so excited, he went sprinting on the field of the team, took his clipboard and threw it, went up over the lights, game plan falling off with all his stuff, and hit out in the field. I was out picking up a clipboard, picking up all the papers. Charlie jumped on top of the pile of the players and just going crazy. Everybody said, boy, the new coach they got, Geesman, he's really excitable. And well, they thought I was just an overage manager and Charlie was Geesman. So that's kind of the way he was too.
All right, let's talk about Wally Yeoman.
Okay. Well, Wally I'd known before. He's a Rensselaer guy, and he was an absolutely great coach, and he was every bit as important to that defense as Charlie Laurie, because Wally offered maturity, stability, and he knew what it was supposed to look like, and he could calm Charlie down, and he was just great. And the thing I really appreciated about Wally, one that goes without saying, is these 3 boys. And his wife was a great booster. But Wally was just he was level-headed, and he'd been the head coach at Bedford. He was itching to get more responsibility. So he liked this platoon thing too, and he took over the secondary, and he asked us, can I pick out the drills I want to do and this and that? And I said, yeah. I found out, 2 things. The worst thing you can do with an assistant coach is not give them all the responsibility they can handle once they're on the same page as you. So that's all I did. I didn't have to, the first 4 or 5 years, I would spend one day with our defensive staff telling them my theory on stuff, how things I thought ought to be done. Our staff got so good, I never did it since. They just met on their own. They did it themselves. They knew what I wanted. We were on the same page. The other thing is giving them responsibility before they're ready for it. So that's the second worst thing. If they're ready for it, give it to them. If they're not ready for it, don't force them to take it. And so that's the thing. A new guy, and I tell anybody I hired, I said, as soon as I know we're on the same page, I'll give you all the responsibility you can handle. And I learned a lot of lessons from that myself. And well, let me just say, Wally was definitely a co-coach. He was, along with Charlie, he was the head coach of the defense. And I just, I like giving those guys all the praise because they did a lot of the work and they sure deserved it. And I can't remember, there's something else, a point I wanted to make. Let me talk a little bit about Trent Yeoman, Wally's son. He played for us, and then he coached for us. And he is the offensive coordinator, and he basically called the plays in the last few years at Penn with the help of West Doy up in the booth. They would talk things over, and we would talk back and forth, but they had a lot of say in what we did. But here's a lesson that I learned. Trent came on, and I said, hey, just follow me around, watch what I do with the passing. He was really interested in the passing game, coaching receivers. So he came by a timeout. I got to blow my nose.